Two syrups, Elliot, just in case.
Okay, it's on.
It is on? Okay, thank you very much, Captain Earl. Good morning, everybody, and an early happy Yom Yerushalayim. We want to continue in our series talking about Mנחem Begin, he should rest in peace, and somewhat about his mentor, Zev Vladimir Jabotinsky. Now, Jabotinsky was a very interesting person in many, many ways. One enigma that many people have is they want to know what made him different. Ma nishtana halida razeh mikol haliders, because there were many leaders that were less on the observant side, and some, but yet there were some of them that some of the more observant people, the more traditional people, were afraid of. But with Jabotinsky, we don't find that. As a matter of fact, we'll have to speak in a few weeks. One of the greatest accomplishments of the Irgun, of Menachem Begin Irgun, was the busting open of the Akko fortress, which was an ancient, maybe back to the Crusades, I have to check how old. It was like the Alcatraz of Israel, and the British were using it. Jabotinsky had been put in there. Other fighters against the British and Arabs were put in there, and Jabotinsky was put in there himself. He was supposed to be sentenced for 15 years. His great big crime was using Jewish troops to fight off the Arabs because the British were taking too long to do anything about it. It was actually the Zion Yule Corps, if you ever heard of that, but that's a whole separate discussion. So the British, instead of punishing the Arabs or anybody else, they punished Jabotinsky and said, you're going to be in prison for 15 years in that prison. Now, Begin didn't have to get him out of that one. Many people worked on it, but one of the stars that worked on it was the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Avram HaKohen Cook. He went around on Chol HaMoed Pesach from shul to shul and said, everyone is starting this Jabotinsky's petition, we're getting him out. We cannot have Jabotinsky in that British prison over there. We got to get him out. So he did have his fans. Rabbi Wein, he should live and be well, mentions that even though Jabotinsky would have been all right if Israel wasn't such a religious place, but he didn't come out and make very anti-religious statements, and there were other secular leaders that did. I don't want to mention kibbutzim by names, but there are some places that absolutely wanted to extract every bit of Torah from the new state of Israel. They wanted to be totally secular, and I don't know if Jabotinsky would have minded that, but he never made agitating statements in his public speeches, and he seems to have been a wonderful speaker, and people just saw him in a different light. More and more people gravitated towards him. Rabbi Wein mentions in his book, fantastic book, maybe the shul has it, Faith and Faith. It also comes in a movie form. He mentions like this, that Jabotinsky was tarred by the Jewish left and the mainstream Zionist organizations as a fascist. That's some compliment. But Rabbi Wein said, you should know, Jabotinsky was nothing of the kind. He simply despaired of any meaningful Jewish future in the ancient heartland of Eastern Europe, and he believed that Jews would have to fight for their national homeland. To him, and of course there have been other very controversial people that said the following, and you could fight all day if you agree if it's the truth or not, but the Jabotinsky war with the Arabs was unavoidable, and he therefore encouraged the Jews to prepare for it by arming and training themselves for much battle. Now, Rabbi Wein is very, very careful, and he says, well, much of Jabotinsky's gloomy prophecy was to be soon fulfilled in a manner that even he could not dare to envision. So Rabbi Wein's leaving you a little bit of room there to be exactly what side that you want, but he saw things clearly, and there's other information. Praise my mother-in-law for this. Is from 1980, a Jabotinsky dinner in the Waldorf Astoria. There's some great information here, but they have documentation how Jabotinsky clearly prophesied the Holocaust, and he ran around telling the Jews, you've got to get out of here. You've got to get out of here. And people just didn't even want to hear it, or didn't want to listen, or didn't know what to do. But he tried to do everything he can, and his organization was involved, and later Begin got involved in it too, of getting as many Jews out of Israel and Europe and Russia, legally, illegally, because he could see the writing on the wall, and he tried to get out whoever he could.
And that's why he was called a fascist?
I didn't call him a fascist.
That's what you said, right?
Oh, no, I'm saying it. Rabbi Wein says there were people, Jewish political parties, who called him a fascist.
Because he wanted to get them out of Europe?
No.
One of his big... let me tell you that's the whole thing he did, and then you can form an opinion. He formed an organization called the Youth Beitar all over Europe. And he made it clear that I am training these young men and women that they're going to be the Jewish army, and they're going to do whatever it has to do to free the Jews and get Israel back. And he was doing this all over the place with success. My father was a member of it in Slonim, Poland. So I guess they just felt that he was going to be too much of an activist, too much of a rabble-rouser. And you should know, even he had a lot... Him and Begin didn't see eye to eye with Ben-Gurion, and a lot of them kept saying, diplomacy, negotiation, don't make so much waves. But he was getting to the point where he said, we've done everything. The Jews have been waiting for hundreds of years for there to be change, and it's just not happening. He goes, davening is very nice, and learning Torah and mitzvahs is nice, fine, but let me show you this. He said, eliminate the diaspora, or the diaspora will surely eliminate you. There he is on the train over there. So I guess he made those statements and other statements that gave people like my dad hope, but some other people felt like, what are you unleashing over here? And he did have a movement all over the place with inspiring the youth. And these documents here, the journal over here writes that he really tried to imbue Jewish youth with a regal feeling that I'm not a verschleppte, trodden on, stomped on Jew. I'm going to raise up like of old, and I'm going to go back to my country. So I guess some people were scared of him. But he had a lot of accomplishments, went all over the world speaking, and he was involved in a lot of immigration arrangements. His son also, and he really laid the groundwork which was going to lead Begin on to where he had to go. Let me share with you his Tisha B'Av message. Now again, he's an interesting person. He had his own level of observance. We're not here to judge anybody. And halavai, like my Rebbe used to say, halavai, I should have a few of his mitzvahs. My Rebbe, Rabbi Schneider, of blessed memory, he used to say, Jews sometimes were very bad at judging each other. We're very good at that. And he would hear people say different things. I'll share with you something that got my ire up. I was listening to a tape this week. I work at the Yeshiva in Lancaster, so I got to have tapes in the car, because you get bored. How many times can you listen to the same news again? I already know by heart whatever TOP. You don't get TOP in upstate Pennsylvania, but you have to have tapes. So I had one person that had the gall, and it was someone that I usually respect, had the gall. They were hitting up on Sandy Koufax. And I was very upset. Because any rabbi that I ever met, everybody loves Sandy Koufax. He wasn't perfect. Did he throw brushback pitches at Willie Mays? Yeah, he did. Did Willie Mays deserve it? I'm not talking about that because I like Willie Mays also. He was a tough pitcher. But we all know that everybody loves to talk about Sandy Koufax and the World Series and Rosh Hashanah and all that. And I was listening to a tape of a speaker who was picking on Sandy Koufax for his level of observance. So I really just wanted to shut off the tape, because I had learned from so many rabbis and so many people were proud of Sandy Koufax. Maybe I wouldn't need kosher in his house, but as my rabbi would say, how do you really know that Sandy Koufax, none of your business what he does in his private life, when he had that incident with Rosh Hashanah, how do you know what he did for the Jewish people. Such a big Kiddush Hashem to stand up like that. I mean, everyone can have their own opinion, but my rabbi, Rabbi Schneider, used to say, don't judge people, because they may have done 1 or 2 mitzvahs that could have done who knows what for the Jews in heaven and Jewish pride, and you may have 200 mitzvahs that doesn't even come to his ankle. So don't pick on anybody, you know. So, but I'm just saying that we don't want to judge Jabotinsky either, but he definitely had his own level of observance, and it seemed he liked to give talks on Tisha B'Av, and this is a very, very powerful statement which motivated a lot of people, and it certainly motivated Begin, which will lead us into an excerpt from Begin's Knesset address when he came in. This is, again, it looks like it was given in Warsaw. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that right. My father, of blessed memory, used to pronounce Warsaw the way you're really supposed to, but if I would say it, pieces of my teeth. Does anyone know the right way to pronounce Warsaw? Because it's not Warsaw. Dad used to say something like Varsha, but I don't know if American teeth can say that word. Huh? Not Marjan. That was my mother. Marjan. This is Dad. So anyway, and this is also 1938 on Tisha B'Av. This is what he had to say. It is already 3 years, this is Jabotinsky, that I'm calling upon you Polish Jewry, who are the crown of world Jewry, and I continue to warn you incessantly that a catastrophe is coming closer. 38, you see it. I became gray and old in these past years, and my heart bleeds that you, dear brothers and sisters, do not see the volcano which will soon begin to spit its all-consuming lava. I know that you Polish Jews are not seeing this because you are immersed in your daily worries. Today, however, I demand your trust. You were convinced already that my prognosis have already proven to be right. If you think differently, then drive me out from your midst. However, if you do believe me, then listen to me, please. In this 11th hour, in the name of God, let any one of you save himself as long as there's still time, and time there is very little. Now, the next paragraph is worth $1 million and perfect, absolutely perfect for Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, the 6-day war. And what else I would like to say to you in this day of Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the year. Whoever of you will escape from this catastrophe, he or she will live to see the exalted moment of a great Jewish wedding, the rebirth and the rise of a Jewish state. I don't know if I will be privileged to see it. My son will. I believe in this, as I am sure that tomorrow morning the sun will rise, and that was seems to be the last Tisha B'Av message he got to be.
I can give you a fact on this prophecy.
What?
I can give you a fact on this prophecy. My grandparents lived in Vilna, and my
Landsman.
Landsman, and my father and his sisters got out. Then his brother listened to Jabotinsky, and he walked to Israel.
He walked?
He walked. And he became a captain in the Israeli Navy. About the time of 37, my father and his sisters, they sent to his parents steamship tickets to come to the States. But his parents felt like a lot of the other Jewish Poles that the Germans were perfect gentlemen during World War I. The enemy was the Russians, and they never left. The first day the Germans came into Vilna, my grandparents were machine gunned. And that's a true story.
Oh my!
I mean, you know.
Oh, it's good. It's good. It's good that we have you at least. Oh, that's a
Cousins in
heartbreaker.
Israel. I guess there's a lot of cousins in Israel.
Yeah, I got a lot of family in Israel. Yeah, so he was on the. In fact, he was chief engineer on the Eilat, on the destroyer that was hit by the Egyptian missile, but he survived. So now you learned something new.
Well, so you got miracles all over the place.
So let's say, bless Jabotinsky.
That's right. So I thank you for sharing that. That is powerful. So we have to really appreciate God. It took a lot to get you here, to keep you here.
Me?
To stay well.
I was born here.
Yeah, all right, but we're still appreciative of everything that happened before. I want to share with you a piece Rabbi Wein brings here of Begin's Knesset address upon his installation. And then I want to share with you some words of warning from the Kli Yakar, who's from the primary commentaries in the Torah. Now, we're really walking a tightrope over here, because a lot of it is in hindsight, but we know it's not finished yet. With Jewish activism, and when we have to be aggressive and all these kind of things, we know a lot of it's necessary, but we know there always has to be a balance, and sometimes if you do it wrong, you could get yourself in more trouble, which unfortunately poor Israel is always trying to figure out. If I do this, you criticize me. You do that, you criticize me, but we got to do what we have to do. Rabbi Frand, who's alive and well in their Israel, he quotes Golda Meir. Now you're going to get a big kick out of this. In the world of Zionism, that certain Hasidim have a different view. That makes a lot of people upset and angry and all these kind of things, and they're not supportive of some things, and a smaller percentage of them will show up at Israeli rallies cheering for the Arabs. My own son was at a rally in D.C. where there were thousands of people supporting Israel, and there was a tiny, tiny pocket of some Hasidim there from some way off people that were cheering for the Arabs. And my son was my son Noach was a red-blooded Jewish boy, and he and his friends had to restrain themselves from not going over and settling things. They really had a lot of restraint. It was disheartening to have thousands and thousands of people. And as a matter of fact, a boy from my carpool, Rabbi Ruvain Brand from YU, he was speaking over there. Everybody was so proud, and then you had a few Jews over there cheering for the Arabs. Really breaks your heart. Rabbi Frand said like this. Rabbi Frand's an interesting rabbi. He is from Seattle. Rabbi Frand said his mother, Adele, she used to rest in peace, was a Zionist back in a town called Satmar, which the real name is Satmar or Saint Marie, but we know not all of them, but there's a pocket of them that can be quote-unquote anti-Israel and there's trouble. So Rabbi Frand says his mother was a very, very big Zionist in Satmar, and she used to march around making a lot of noise with her JNF Pushka. The Karen, the blue and white one that you put Jewish National Fund, and she would go around shouting and collecting for that stucca, and she was in the face of those anti-Israel people, and he said they couldn't take it, and she didn't care, because she was collecting money for Israel, and that was it. And that's going back before the war. So in the path of his mother, and I don't know where Rabbi Frand may be a little bit on both sides, he quotes Golda Meir on this issue of Jewish activism and doing what you have to do, sometimes not being sure if you have to do and what you should do. Golda Meir said like this, you should rest in peace. I can forgive the Arabs for a lot of things they did, but there's one thing I can't forgive them for, that because of them, the Jews had to turn into a tougher, more apathetic people in order to survive. So she says that, the Jew used to be viewed as the more gentle, merciful person, but she said in order to survive, the Arabs have turned us into that, and she says that I can't forgive them for. But it's a tightrope we walk. So let me share with you, moving on from Jabotinsky to his student Begin, a piece of Begin's Knesset address. Says Begin, we were granted our right to exist by the God of our fathers at the glimmer of the dawn of human civilization nearly 4,000 years ago. For that right, which has been sanctified in Jewish blood from generation to generation, we Jews have paid a price unexampled in the annals of nations. Certainly this fact does not diminish or enfeeble our right. To the contrary, Therefore, I re-emphasize that we do not expect anyone to request on our behalf that our right to exist in the land of our fathers be recognized. Now, this we spoke last week. This comes from his father. Israel is ours. There always were some Jews there. You want to recognize us fine, I hope you do. But this is our land. We are here to stay. Because, as Jabotinsky pointed out, there really isn't a whole where to go. And of course, you all know that during the big war, America wasn't exactly letting people in. I speak sometimes about a Rabbi Singer from Vietnam in the 6-Day War, and his wife and her whole family, they actually wound up in Guatemala. They were running from Czechoslovakia. They couldn't get into America. They wound up in Guatemala. Now, if the entire Jewish people would have moved to Guatemala, I don't know what would have happened. But that was the thing. We're in Israel. We're here to stay. You're not taking it from us. I hope you recognize us. Some countries did, but he says, we're here. We have a right to exist. That is a parable that Begin says in his book. That's very, very strong. I want to share that with you. And then I want to end with the Kli Yakar, who has a general words of sage warning about when Jews have to be tough. I just want to mention, I always get mixed up if it was the Crusade. No, I think it was during the Cossacks. During the attack of the Cossacks,
1903.
which was brutal. What?
In 1903, that attack.
I mean 1600s.
Or 60.
I'm going back to Kimmelmecki.
Okay.
I'm going way back.
Kimmelmecki, yeah.
I'm going way back. There was a point where the Jews got so frustrated, they got together an army and they struck back at the Cossacks. You see, in the car I listened to a lot of it takes from Rabbi Weins. There was one week I listened to a Crusade one and a Cossack one the same week, but I'm pretty sure Rabbi Wein mentioned it on the Cossack one. He said there was a point where the Jews had enough and they struck back at the Cossacks. And they killed 200 of them. They thought they were going to get somewhere. The Christian community got so angry, they remobilized and they turned around and killed like 1,000 Jews. So sometimes striking back is complicated because you don't know what's going to happen, and we know what happened over there. But this is a parable that Begin said in the spirit of Jabotinsky, and this is the fire that fuels everything Begin did in Israel, whether it was blowing up the Akko fortress, the King David Hotel, I know that's the hardest one to deal with, stealing weapon dumps from the British, sabotaging their train ties, whatever it is. But this was a parable that went with him. And this is actually what Begin said was he was in a Soviet prison being interrogated. Because the guy was trying to tell him, you and your Zionism is evil, and you're not going to save the Jewish people, and it's horrible, and you got to go. Communism! He was being interrogated. He spent some time in solitary confinement also there. Said Mנחem Begin, imagine, citizen judge, that you are walking in the street and see a house on fire. What do? So obviously, you call the fire brigade. You call the fire brigade. You pull the switch. But if you suddenly hear the cry of a woman or of a child coming from the burning house, are you going to wait for the firemen? Surely not. You rush in and you try to save that woman or child. That is our situation with the Jewish people. The Jewish people are on fire. We keep calling the fire brigade. We're davening and we're diplomacy and we're doing this and we're doing that. But the women and the children are screaming from the burning house. You got to do something else. Can't you too see that we Jews, we are the men and women trapped in the burning house? You know what militant anti-Semitism has done to us. You know what the Germans are doing to us. Not only are our houses burning, our families are in flame. Can we wait for the fire brigade to arrive? Here's the bad part. And what if the fire brigade comes, but they're too late? Then it's all over. No, our people must be saved now. We have been trying to get them out of the flames into our homeland. Can this Zionism be such a bad thing? And this is his mantra going all the way through. So let me just share with you what the Kli Yakar says. Now, I know you probably like to know the Kli Yakar's official name, because on his driver's license, it didn't say Kli Yakar. Just checking real quick in the front where they have his name down. All right, another time I'll have to look it up. Oh, there it is. Rabbi Laniando. Okay, good enough. Yaakov Avinu is dying. It's the end of Sefer Bereshit. Yaakov Avinu is giving blessings, Jacob, the patriarch, to all his children. And he's giving each one what he needs, and he's got to talk to Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi, they are the original patriarchs of Jewish militant Zionism, activism, whatever you want to call it. They are the ones that when their sister Dina was abducted as teenagers, they trashed the town. They are the ones that thought our Uncle Joseph was somehow a force that was going to ruin the Jewish people, and they wanted to sell him. So these are tough fellows, and they're not really good at consulting their dad. And the Torah tells us sometimes they didn't even talk to each other enough at their meetings. So as Yaakov's getting ready to pass on, Yaakov says like this to them. And this is the Kli Yakar's explanation on the psukim, on the verses where Yaakov Avinu curses their anger because it's too fierce. And he says, I need to spread out Shimon and Levi throughout the Jewish people, and they overdo it with weapons. So says the Kli Yakar. Yaakov Avinu says there is a need for Jewish activism and to be militant sometimes. But Yaakov said right now, the way God made it, we have inside of two tribes concentrated Jewish toughness in Shimon and Levi. We have an overdose of azus pamim, of fierce chutzpah and stubbornness of the neck. Yaakov said, if I leave the Jewish people like this, we're not going to make it. The Jewish people is not going to make it. Because the Jewish people is going to try to steamroll everybody, and they're all going to gang up and wipe us out. Which is what Begin was saying. And Begin said, are you really so sure that we're going to make it? Or maybe, God will save us, but who knows who'll be left. So Yaakov Avinu said, I cannot leave things the way they are. Shimon and Levi, I don't want to call them hotheads, but every time someone upsets the Jewish people, you get all explosive. I can't leave all this concentrated in two tribes that are friendly and live near each other. Therefore, Yaakov Avinu said, my blessing is, I am going to scatter this trait of azus ponim and kshei eiref, which is Jewish fierceness, chutzpah, and stubbornness, and I'm going to scatter it throughout the Jewish people. The Jewish people needs it, but we can't have it so concentrated in one place. We're going to put sparks of it throughout the Jewish people. And of course, you, Shimon and Levi, you're not going to own a portion of Israel to just one piece. The Levites will be separated in 48 different cities. If you look at any book about the land of Israel, Shimon also was in small cities speckled all over the place. He says, you're the originals. I got to keep you guys away from each other. But I'm going to take a portion of your chutzpah and I'm going to scatter it throughout the entire Jewish people so there's just little bits, and little bits that'll be called upon to use from time to time. Sometimes the Jews may have to use it with their fists and their weapons. Other times it could just be people are trying to get the Jews to stop learning Torah and do mitzvahs. So we'll have to be a little bit stubborn. And I'm going to scatter that around everybody, but I can't leave things the way they are. The Gemara in Be'ah, Talmud Be'ah says, if Hashem had never given the Jews the Torah, we just would have been just a fierce, powerful people. We would have just run wild, run amok, and steamrolled everybody, and who knows what would have become of us, what we would have done to ourselves, what others would have done to us. So basically, Kli Yakar is saying to Begin and Jabotinsky and everybody, there is going to be a time and a place to get tough, but be very, very careful, and be careful if you have too many of these personalities together, doing too much, too forceful. Now, I don't know if Begin knew this Kliyaka or not. He did spend time in yeshiva in Poland, and of course, you know, he was hiding from the British as a Kollel man under a different name, Rabbi Yisrael Sassaber, for a while, and he did plenty of learning in yeshiva. So Begin knew plenty of Torah, but I will say that in his book, it is evidence that most of the time, Begin was very, very careful, and he was on a double tight wire. He had to be careful not to upset the British too much, and he had to be careful not to upset the Jews too much. And Begin tells us, with all the miracles of the Israeli military and everything that happened with the bombs, he said the greatest miracle of the state of Israel may really be this great wedding that Jabotinsky refers to, is that there wasn't a Jewish civil war, because Begin stresses again and again and again the Haganah, which was founded by Jabotinsky, the Haganah and the other factions of Begin and this one and that one. He said so many times they came close to civil war, and there were Jews that killed Jews because they felt they were getting in their way. But Begin said it was so close. He says, well, the Jewish nation has a lot of problems, but he said any other nation, they all would have killed each other. And he says we came close to killing each other, but we didn't. And he mentions, though, that when it came 48 and Ben Gurion announced, that's it, no more separate factions. Everybody, a Grovgan, underground, you're all one army now, you're one IDF, that's it, it has to be. So Begin said it was hard because he says you'd be in a platoon with someone from the Haganah or some other group, and a few weeks ago you couldn't stand each other. Some of you would have shot each other, and now you're covering each other's you know what. And he just said it was so hard. And he goes, there were problems, but he said that the Jews didn't all kill each other. That may be a bigger miracle than the tanks and the missiles. All right, so we look forward to continuing to learning more and more about and from Menachem Begin. Thank you very much. Please enjoy some more courtesy.